I hadn't used a dating app in ages, but life had thrown me some curveballs. For years, I've been trapped in a cycle of smoking cigarettes, and to make matters worse, my sleep schedule was a disaster. I'd stay up past midnight, often dragging myself out of bed well into the afternoon. Recently, I started seeing a therapist for my nicotine addiction, but progress was slow, and I felt like I was stuck in a rut. One night, as I stood on my balcony, my usual spot for a smoke, I noticed something odd. My neighbor, a guy I'd never met, had a black van parked in his driveway, replacing his usual navy blue BMW. My curiosity was piqued, but I shrugged it off at first. However, the next night, the van was back, and I began to wonder about its purpose. I made a game of it, watching from a distance and spinning wild theories in my head. Then one fateful morning, everything changed. It was around 5 a.m. when I spotted my neighbor emerging from his house, carrying a long black bag that resembled a set of golf clubs, only heavier. My heart raced as I watched him place the bag inside the van and speed off into the darkness. My mind buzzed with questions. What was in that bag? Determined to uncover the mystery, I decided to keep an eye on his movements. I stayed up late, waiting for the van to return. Finally, around 1 a.m., I pulled back into the driveway. I could see him struggling to haul the same heavy bag out again, his silhouette moving cautiously before disappearing into his house. Something about it felt off, and I was on edge. The next night, I flipped a coin to decide my next move and opted to follow him. As soon as the van pulled out around 4 a.m., I hopped in my car, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I turned off my headlights and trailed behind him, the eerie darkness swallowing us. After 20 tense minutes, he veered off onto a dirt path leading into the woods, and I followed, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. The path led to a deserted gas station, shrouded in shadows. My neighbor's BMW sat parked outside, and I suddenly felt a rush of anxiety. I parked my car and approached cautiously, my instincts screaming that I shouldn't be there. The gas station doors were locked, and I was moved around the building. I noticed it was completely abandoned, but still had an alarm system. Why would a deserted place need an alarm anyway? Against my better judgment, I picked up a rock and smashed a window, shattering the eerie silence. Instantly, alarms blared, sending me sprinting back to my car. Panic surged through me. I spit away, adrenaline coursing. As I called 911, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had just done. The next morning, I woke up to a shocking sight. Police cars swarmed my neighbor's house, lights flashing wildly. I watched in disbelief as officers let him out in handcuffs. A whirlwind of questions swirling in my mind. What had I just stumbled into? I tried asking the police for details, but they stonewalled me, leaving me in the dark. Desperate for answers, I attempted to return to the gas station, but the road was completely blocked off. I stood there as my heart was racing, wondering if I'd ever muster the courage to venture back into those woods and uncover the secrets lurking in the shadows. I've always been a heavy sleeper, so when strange occurrences began to invade my nights, I was utterly unprepared. Growing up, I didn't have sleep disorders like night terrors or sleep paralysis, just the occasional nightmare, which I often found thrilling, like living through a 3D horror movie. I shared my apartment with a roommate named Trish, and while we had different work schedules and rarely saw each other, that July would prove to be unforgettable. It all started after my recent breakup, during a particularly hot week when my window AC unit hummed loudly, drowning out the world. One night, I fell into a deep sleep and found myself dreaming of a family gathering around a dinner table. But instead of familiar faces, I was confronted by a terrifying creature that resembled an alien from science, complete with horns and claws. Definitely something out of a horror movie. I tried to escape, but ended up in a nightmarish version of my own room, where the creature loomed closer before I jolted awake. My heart raced in the dark, and I dismissed the nightmare as just that, nothing more than a bad dream. But the next night, something happened that shattered my sense of safety. I woke up to find my bedroom door wide open, which I always kept shut unless I was drinking. I figured it was Trish checking on me, but when I asked her the next day, she denied it. I wondered if I had gotten up in my sleep without realizing it. The very next night, the same demon from my first nightmare returned, but this time I was trapped in a dark, empty room with it. I felt its presence closing in on me, suffocating me, until it was right above me. It scratched my thigh with a claw, and this time I could almost feel the pain. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, but something was different. There was a light sting on my upper thigh. I was panicking. I rushed to the bathroom and flicked on the light, only to scream in horror at what I saw. A gash on my thigh, as if the creature had really marked me. I bolted to Trish's room, waking her up in a frenzy. She was just as shocked and bewildered, asking how I got that injury. We tore through my room, flipping over sheets and looking for anything that could have caused the wound. Nothing made sense. But in that moment, what else could we think? Then Trish put her finger to her lips, signaling me to be quiet. She turned off the AC, and for the first time, silence enveloped the room. It was in that stillness that we heard it, a faint rustling sound coming from under my bed. A chill ran down my spine as we exchanged terrified glances, and we both instinctively knew we had to get out. We raced to our neighbor's apartment, knocking frantically until he answered. An older guy. He didn't seem like the fighting type, but we were desperate. He let us use his phone to call 911. As we waited for the police, we heard a door slam in the hallway, and it sounded chillingly like ours. We couldn't move fast enough to see who it was, our hearts pounding with dread. And when the police finally arrived, they confirmed the intruder was gone. But we had left every light on in the apartment when we fled, which meant our uninvited guest knew we were aware of him. The realization hit me hard. The creature in my nightmares was likely a manifestation of the intruder. I had dreamt about him even before I had any idea he was there, lurking in the shadows. To think that he had scratched my thigh, leaving a real mark, was disturbing beyond belief. This experience completely changed how I viewed dreams and nightmares. They were no longer just reflections of my subconscious. They had taken on a terrifying, tangible form that I would never forget. The lines between sleep and reality blurred in ways I could never have imagined, and the horror of that summer lingered long after the nightmares faded. When I was just a little kid living in our old house in Suffolk County, Long Island, I was about 6 or 7 years old. My older brother and I shared a massive bedroom on the top floor that used to belong to an elderly woman my dad rented to. After she moved out, the entire space became our playground. The layout was simple. Our bedroom was on the left, straight ahead was the bathroom, and to the right was an extra kitchen and a small bedroom. Our room was filled with countless toys and games, including a race car toy that had flashing lights and made various sounds, like honking and revving. It was a gift from my brother, and we had it for as long as I could remember. One night, as my brother Luke and I lay in bed, still awake, the room was suddenly pierced by the loud revving of that toy car. The lights flashed on, illuminating the dark room. I was frozen in fear and immediately accused Luke of pranking me, but he was laughing, insisting he hadn't touched it. My heart raced as the car fell silent again, and though I was terrified, I eventually drifted off to sleep. Days went by without incident, but the next creepy occurrence was just around the corner. One night, while we were in bed, we heard a strange thud echoing through the room. Luke, always the jokester, teased me about a ghost lurking nearby, and I yelled at him to stop before I went to get Mom. Just then, we saw the lights flicker back on from the corner of the room. The toy car was activated again. Panic stressed me out, and I bolted down the stairs, crying for my mom and spilling my terrified tale of ghosts and thoughts. My mom, half asleep, assumed Luke was trying to scare me, but he protested, pointing out that there was no way he could turn on the car from his bed. That night, fear sent me to my parents' room where I slept with them. Too terrified to face the shadows alone, time passed and the unease faded, until one fateful night when Luke was gone, likely at a sleepover. I was alone in our big room, my heart pounding in the dark. I had tucked the car away in a small bedroom across the hall, trying to forget about it. After my mom kissed me and said goodnight and left the door open, I rolled over trying to sleep, but anxiety kept me wide awake. Then came a sound unlike anything I could describe, a soft rolling noise down the hall. My heart sank as I turned to see the toy car gliding into the room, its lights flashing ominously. I screamed with every ounce of terror I felt and pressed my back against the wall, calling for my mom. My parents rushed up the stairs, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. They found the car sitting there in the middle of the floor, its eerie glow lighting up the room. I was frantic, insisting that someone had pushed it in. My dad went to check the other rooms, but there was no one there. No hiding places, no signs of life, just the chilling emptiness of the upstairs. My parents were torn between dismissing my fears as childish imagination and grappling with the unsettling possibility that something was truly wrong. The toy car didn't have a feature to move on its own. Yet, here it was. To ease my fears, my dad smashed the toy and threw it in the neighbor's trash. But the relief didn't last long. I ended up sleeping in the room for a while until my dad finally insisted I need to return to my own bed. That night changed everything for me. It instilled a deep belief in the paranormal and made me question what truly lingers beyond death. The feeling that something unseen was watching, waiting, and perhaps even toying with us has haunted me ever since.